Okay, good evening. Welcome to the Amherst League of Women Voters opening meeting. My name is Deanna Pearlstein, and it's good to see you all. We're looking forward to another year in the league, a great year. In September, we joined the Northampton League to sponsor a candidates night for the sheriff's race. And we've been busy registering voters at a new location for us at the Amherst Survival Center. We were there on National Voter Registration Day, September 20th, and we plan to be there on a regular basis. And so we will be looking for interested members to staff the table. It's always fun to see people and meet new people and help them register. You can contact Leslie if you'd like to help and see some of your league friends in person. Phyllis has formed a committee to study the town council, and I'm sure that this group would also welcome your help. You can now register online, thanks to David Shannabrook and to Jessica Ryan. The State League is holding some informational meetings on Zoom to help people understand the ballot questions better. And there are going to be 3 of those sessions, October 12th, October 13th, and October 17th. And I'm sure that Jessica will be sending out little mini bulletins for us on those dates. The first one is the one that the league supports, ballot question 4. And then on October 20th at 7 o'clock, Stan Rosenberg is going to speak on Voter Forum, Know the State Offices. And he's going to be explaining the various offices that we'll be voting for on November 8th and what they actually do and how they affect our daily lives. So that should be interesting. And our Racial Justice Committee has been planning programs for the Judy Brooks series. They just had a program this week. And maybe now that the days are getting cooler, you'll have time to join some of those interesting programs. So we're hard at work helping voters to be the most informed and ready for elections on November 8th. That's some of our plans for this year. And now I'd like to introduce Susan Millinger, who will introduce our speaker this evening.
Thank you, Deanna. And again, I welcome everybody. It's nice to see everybody, those I know and those I don't know. Patricia Comfort, who is more commonly known as Pattye, joined LWVMA in November of 2019. She came to us after 7 years as executive director of the Women's Bar Association and the Women's Bar Foundation of Massachusetts. And I think I should point out again here that Pattye is the executive director of LWVMA. Pattye began her legal career as an in-house counsel to the National Association of State Public Interest Research Groups, commonly known as PIRGs. She also worked at the Massachusetts Legal Assistance Corporation as the director of the Equal Justice Coalition, building support among the private bar for access to justice through increased funding for civil legal aid programs in Massachusetts. She is an experienced community organizer, having worked with tenants in Boston's public housing developments, as well as with low-income tenants in Lowell. Pattye is a graduate of Boston College and a Northeastern University School of Law. And all this you can read if you go to lwvma.org and look at our team and see the little introductions, little mini bios. But I'm going to add something now that Pattye has not read, and I hope she finds it acceptable. Pattye is an extremely effective executive director. I say this not only based on personal experience, but also because as first vice president of LWVMA, I sit on a small personnel committee that reads Pattye's annual evaluations. I have learned that all agree Pattye is bright, well-organized, hardworking, and congenial. She has excellent leadership skills, but she also is an equally effective worker as one of a group. all the different groups with which she works, the many coalitions which Pattye is associated with, as the League is associated with in working together on issues. These coalitions, the board members and the members of various League committees and her staff all agree that Pattye is great to work with and work for. We are, I think, very lucky to have Pattye speak with us, and I appreciate her giving her time to this. And I don't want to take more time talking about how great Pattye is to work with. I want you to hear what she has to say. So Pattye.
Thank you so much, Susan. This is so embarrassing. But seriously, thank you so much. I love working with you on the board, and thank you very much. So Susan had asked me to, sort of talk about how the state league works in conjunction and collaboration with the local leagues around the state, and just to sort of talk about how we continue to build that two-way bridge, that two-way street with information sort of going both ways. I mean, you all know that we have 46 leagues throughout the Commonwealth, and all of the local leagues, as you well know, everyone sort of runs their own show. And so it's a lot like herding cats, in terms of being, at the state level and trying to, keep a finger in what everybody's doing. It's definitely, it's definitely a challenge, and, a lot of balls in the air all the time. But anyway, I look at the state league as sort of the convener, the organization that brings everybody together. And so that's just sort of my, top of the line, sort of remarks about that. But I have a PowerPoint that I'm going to share, so just bear with me for 1 second. Let's see. I've done this a million times, but it's never, there's always something happening. All right. So can you all see my screen?
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Okay. Great. Okay. So LWVMA and local leagues are work together. I put this slide up because I just wanted for people to see that, this is sort of the breadth and the depth of where the league has a presence throughout Massachusetts. We've had a couple of leagues that have expanded recently. So the league that used to be Marion, Rochester, and Mattapoisett is now the South Coast League, and so you can see that there's a much bigger, sort of green down there in the southeast. We cover a lot more towns now in the South Coast area, and similarly, there was a 3-town league in the North Shore, Middleton, Boxford, in Topsfield, and they have now reconstituted as a North Shore League again, so really have sort of expanded. And then of course out in your neck of the woods, the Franklin County League covers a wide area, as does the Central Berkshire County League. So I just put this slide up so that people could sort of see where we are throughout the state. The way that I sort of think about this is that, all of us, everyone that's working at the local level, everyone that's working at the state level, and a lot of people are doing both. A lot of you and many others who are working at the local level are also working at the state level, but we really are, the sum of our parts. And I really just want to thank everybody for doing their part, because this is really, I think the league has been around for 102 years now. And we have really, sort of, our reputation is such that we're an effective, respected, trusted organization in the Commonwealth. And all of that is due to, folks like you being involved at the local level. So I just have sort of these 3 buckets. This is sort of an incomplete chart, because of course, what would be next would be sort of the state league, and then after that, the National League. So I don't have those there, but really the local league financial support. So for example, not only do people pay dues to be a member of the League of Women Voters, but several, I won't say many, but definitely several local leagues support the state league with a financial contribution every year. And Amherst is one of those leagues that does that every year. So I really just want to make sure I say thank you for the annual contribution that your league makes to the state league. We really appreciate that. And then the second bucket, grassroots activism. Obviously, I've only been with the league for 3 years, but my understanding is that people get involved in the league because they want to be involved in what's going on in their local community. I mean, that really is the great strength of our organization, that people get involved from the get-go because of what's happening locally. And that feeds up into, which I'll talk about in a minute, but that feeds up into what we're doing legislatively at the state level as well, because obviously the issues that people are concerned about that are affecting them in their local communities are also issues that are affecting people across the state. So our grassroots activism is, a key component, I think, of who we are. And then, of course, the local league leaders, everybody on this call tonight, I have been absolutely amazed at the level of commitment that folks who are running their local leagues have to the organization. And this is no small feat in terms of, I think it's relatively complicated. The league has a lot of rules, and it's relatively complicated to run an effective, well-organized organization. So my hats are off to all of you who, take that job seriously and are very conscientious about running your organizations well. So that's really, I think that those three buckets really encapsulate, who we are, and all of these three buckets sort of, feed into the state level, and then that all feeds into the national level, because, everybody knows we're a three-tiered organization. I'm not going to talk about the national tonight, but I just wanted to mention that. So moving on, the way I like to think about what we're doing is that we're all working at the level that we're working at, but it all sort of, it's all a collaboration, among, as I said before, the sum of our many parts. So we're all working locally. Some of us are working at the state level, but it's really the collective work that makes an impact and that has an effect throughout the Commonwealth, both in everybody's local community as well as at the state level. So I just want to talk about a few examples of that collective work that we all do. The first example is our Legislative Action Committee at the state level. So I am super impressed by, the volunteers that are our legislative specialists. We have 26 legislative specialists, all, working in a different topic area. They're all volunteers. Nobody gets paid. And collectively, they follow in the last legislative session, they followed 160 bills. This is a lot of work. Many of them are involved in, statewide coalitions on that particular topic area. And for several legislative specialists I can think of, I mean, it's really a full-time job. I mean, I think of Nancy Brumback. She is an unpaid staff person. I mean, she is somebody that puts in probably 40 hours a week when it's at the heavy legislative time. And then there's many others like her, but Nancy's she's been the Legislative Action Committee chair. That's why I've got her name there. So so just to sort of talk about, again, the collaboration. So it's not just legislative specialists who are all local league leaders from around the state. It's also the coalitions that I mentioned that many of these specialists are involved in. And so the one that comes to mind, because myself and Nancy Brumback are the league representatives to the Election Modernization Coalition. I think a lot of you are probably familiar with this. This is the one where this is the coalition that gets involved in all of the elections reform laws. So we're in coalition with our steering committee consists of Common Cause Massachusetts, ACLU of Massachusetts, Mass Voter Table, Mass Vote, did I say Common Cause Massachusetts, and MassPerg. So those are, and the League. So those are the organizations that are in the Election Modernization Coalition, are really driving the agenda statewide for the election reform. So I don't have to tell all of you, automatic voter registration, and more recently, the Votes Act, you know, during the pandemic, temporary election reforms with vote by mail, and now in June of 22, the Votes Act, making all of those pandemic reforms permanent. So I think that the point here is that by ourselves, even though the League is a mighty organization, has a very long history with you know, elections and voting, our bread and butter issue, we are much stronger collectively with the other organizations in the Election Modernization Coalition. And I'll also add that several of the organizations in that coalition are focused on communities of color and low propensity voters. So by working in coalition with those organizations, we are, you know, sort of spreading our work to the communities of color, low-income communities, and sort of helping, you know, our mission of bringing all eligible citizens into the electorate. So I think that that's really important. The second sort of area that I have on the slide is the student-led civics projects. And I think probably most people know that Karen Mazza is the League. She's been the League's representative to the Mass Civics Learning Coalition. So that was the statewide coalition that that got the law passed. I think it was in 2018. I think it was 2018. Sorry, don't quote me on that. But anyway, the law requiring civics education in grades 8 through 12. And so I am not as familiar with the Mass Civics Learning Coalition, but obviously I know it involves all of the big players in the civic space and in the education space. And Karen, as the League representative, you know, obviously she's the Nancy Brumback of the civics. I think of her as the Nancy Brumback of the civics area across the state. And we are very lucky to have her representing the League. So just a quick example. So Karen, you know, a year ago got in touch with me and said, look, you know, the State League has been running this student video contest for several years. We really don't think that, you know, that's sort of, I think the way she phrased it was that's sort of come and gone. And now that we have the new law requiring student-led civics projects, couldn't we think about doing something to highlight those projects, get local leagues involved in that, to sort of take the place of, you know, what we've been doing from the state level on the video contest. I agreed totally. She pulled together a great group of local league leaders, and we spent some time thinking that through. And the result of that was that local leagues this past spring, a handful of local leagues got involved in highlighting, doing local showcases on what's the student-led civics projects the schools in their area were doing. And then ultimately in the spring of 23, we will be involved in a statewide showcase. It's being organized. The main organizer will be the Department of Elementary and Secondary Education, but all of the planning that's been talked about with these groups, including local leagues, that's all gone into the local league doing their own showcases and then feeding into a statewide showcase of the student-led civics projects next spring. So again, another great example of, you know, collaboration that's going on, all being fed again from these grassroots local league leaders, Karen Mazza, Nancy Brumback, up into what's happening at the state level. And then the other example I have down here is the data collection project that we started this last fall as well. And I think everybody probably, or many people on the call, know Karen Price. Karen is just amazing. She's a wealth of knowledge. She's been around the League of Women Voters for many years, and she just has a breadth and depth of knowledge of not just everything about the League, but about a lot of the issues that we work on and many, many other things. So Karen, I tapped Karen to help with this data collection project because, you know, the fact is that you know, a nonprofit best practice is to be collecting the data about what we are doing. And in terms of what had been done in previous years, we really haven't been an organization that is collecting the data. So it's the old question of, well, if you don't count it, did it happen? So Karen, again, pulled together a great group of local league folks and worked on, we, spent some time coming up with a tool, basically it's a Google Doc, and rolled out this project whereby we're asking all of the local leagues to basically document what they're doing, feeding that up into us at the state level. And then at the end of this year will be the first year we will have collected a full year of data, and then we will be reporting out in January to the local leagues about what we have found. And I will confess a little bit that the impetus for this kind of came down from national level, where they were pushing out a semi-annual survey. I don't know if the Amherst League has seen this, but when I first got it, I gasped because we haven't been collecting data. So I could not answer most of the questions that were in the survey. And so this made me realize that because national was sort of going in this direction, that we really needed to get on board. And it's not just, I don't think it's just the National League of Women Voters, but as I mentioned, I think a best practice for any nonprofit, especially if you're doing grant writing and other things, you have to be able to quantify what your impact is. So I think that that's a good thing for us to be doing. It's, I get it that it's a pain. It's like one more thing to do as you're doing your activities. You have to sort of roll this into one of the tasks that you do and to be able to report it at the end. But we're hoping as time goes on, people are going to get used to that, and it'll just become second nature to be able to, fill the form out and submit it. So again, that's just another example of sort of the statewide collaboration. And the last thing I wanted to mention is a recent thing, which is a great discussion. As many of these happen over the League Leader Google group. I know some people get completely annoyed with that, but sometimes there is some great stuff that comes out of that. I think Robin Zoll from the Sharon Stone League said, hey, is anybody doing informational forums on ballot questions 1 through 3? And then Karen Price chimed in, why don't we do that? Why don't we coordinate that so that not every league thinks, has to do a forum on ballot question 1 through 3. So we got together a group of us, and now what's happening is that several local leagues agreed to take the lead on each of the questions. And as Deanna mentioned earlier, we have dates now for question 1, 2, and 3. So we're actually question 1. We're actually combining 2 and 3 because we found out recently that the opposition on question 3 is not mounting a campaign anymore, so we couldn't get anyone to speak on the con side. So we're going to combine 2 and 3 into one night, and all this information will be in the newsletter, the LWVMA newsletter that'll come out on Monday. So that is, those are just some examples, I think, of our collective work and how we sort of coordinate that work, on the statewide level. This is just an infographic. I just wanted you to see sort of what the result is of all of our collaborative work. This is an example of an infographic that we did for fiscal year 21. We don't have the fiscal year 22 one done yet. But it's exactly what it looks like. It's a snapshot. Maybe some of you have seen this. It's just a snapshot of our year. With some of the numbers that even before we started really doing the data collection, this is a lot. All of the numbers here come from our Google Analytics, from our website, and from our Constant Contact account and things like that. So we have our major legislative victories from fiscal 21. We have sort of the numbers of newsletters, action alerts, and event attendees. Vote 411 in the 2020 election reached 230,000 people in Massachusetts, and 126,000 of those were in gateway cities. Again, speaking to our DEI platform, gateway cities are important. And then 20 plus nonprofit collaborations with other nonprofit organizations. That's actually, I think, an understatement, but anyway. So I just show you that to show our collective impact. I'm going to touch on I think partnerships is another important thing that we do at the state level. And I know that many local leagues are forming their own partnerships, obviously at the local level. But I just wanted to talk about this one in particular with the Mass Women of Color Coalition, because I think it's an important collaboration, and really speaks to the League of Women Voters of Massachusetts strategic plan, the basis of which is diversity, equity, inclusion. So the Mass Women of Color Coalition, I'll just read you a real short excerpt of their mission statement. Mass Women of Color Coalition is dedicated to eradicating the racial inequities among women of color created by structural, institutional, interpersonal, and internalized racism. We will address racial inequities through authentic inclusion in the areas of, and then they have these 5 platforms. So political and civic leadership, education justice, economic power and sustainability, criminal justice reform, health and wellness. So as you all can see, many of their platforms overlap with the League of Women Voters platforms. And I highlighted political and civic leadership, for obvious reasons, because that is something, that is sort of the bread and butter of the League. And in the parentheses, the information in parentheses is one of their goals under political and civic leadership is this: increase voter registration, education, and turnout, while also building a strong and engaged membership base in communities of color. So again, in thinking about our DEI commitment, league-wide, the Mass Women of Color Coalition, being in partnership with them, is helping us to reach communities of color, maybe communities of color that we wouldn't necessarily reach otherwise, by collaborating with the Mass Women of Color Coalition. And I just want to tell you the really quick story of how this partnership began. Again, it came from a local league. So the Penny Marston, this is a photo of Penny Marston, who at the time in 2018 was the League of Women Voters of Worcester area president, and that's Celia Blue next to her. Celia is the CEO and one of the founders of the Mass Women of Color Coalition. And Penny at her local league was pushing for a cultural shift in the diversity, equity, inclusion space. So this started with a League of Women Voters Worcester annual meeting, where the Penny invited the Worcester Telegram and Gazette to come to the meeting. And at that meeting, the keynote speakers were Barbara Berenson, who I know many of you know, the historian that has written about the women's suffrage movement, and especially with a focus on Massachusetts. So it was Barbara Berenson and Celia who were the keynote speakers at that meeting in 2018. And so, of course, Barbara spoke about the history of the suffrage movement, including the fact that women of color were left out of that, and then Celia followed up with remarks about why the Mass Women of Color Coalition was created, and the importance of forming authentic partnerships for addressing the inequities that women of color still face, and that is all too prevalent today. So this led to Celia Blue meeting Marian Ashen, who was the president of the League of Women Voters of Massachusetts at the time, and Merrill Kessler, who was the executive director before me, and forming the partnership at a statewide level. And Celia has spoken at league leader events on the statewide level, and their organization has been partnering with us on candidate forums, and importantly had input into the LWVMA strategic plan that we did in 2020. So, and as I mentioned before, the DEI is sort of the underpinning of our strategic plan. So it's obviously important to have an organization like the Mass Women of Color Coalition helping us to sort of form our goals around that. So, so I talk about this because, and then the Worcester Telegram and Gazette, the article that they wrote in the paper, Women's Group Seeking Change Through Alliances, that was the article that appeared in the paper after that meeting. So if we sort of fast forward to this past year, the League has been working with the Mass Women of Color Coalition on the Know Your DA and the Know Your Sheriff campaigns. Those educational campaigns were created by the ACLU of Massachusetts. And I know Deanna mentioned that you guys did your own sheriff forum. And so we have been working this past year with, or the past 6 months with the Massachusetts Women of Color Coalition on many of those DA and sheriff races around the state. And the beauty of working with them is that Maywalk brings many other organizations with them. So for the Essex County DA and Sheriff Forums, we had over 20 organizations, that all the leagues in the area, plus about 15 other organizations that partnered with us on those Sheriff and DA, both the educational forum and then the candidate forum. And similarly in Plymouth County, we had about 8 co-sponsoring organizations. We're still trying to pull together a Plymouth County DA candidate forum. The candidates are giving us the stiff arm, and no, not both of them, one of them. So we're still working on that. But the beauty of this is that, I mean, I'm in those meetings, and I am one of 2 white women in a group of all, you know, everyone else is a woman of color. And I have to tell you that it's been exhilarating for me to be involved with them. And as I mentioned before, the Mass Women of Color Coalition brought 3 traditionally Black sororities who are really active in Plymouth County to the table on that forum. And so we're just, you know, it's just sort of building these partnerships that are really exciting. So I really wanted to just focus on that particular Mass Women of Color Coalition. And then the last slide, this is just me saying, you know, this is our staff. We are small, but we want local leagues to use us. I think everybody knows who Bryn Gorman is. She's been with the league for almost 7 years. She's our membership and community engagement manager. She's terrific to work with, and will help with all kinds of technology and, you know, membership stuff, whatever issue you have. So please always reach out to her. Lily Sweeterman has just joined us. Taylor Grenga, who many of you probably know, left for law school at the end of July, and Lily is now our administrative and program associate. And then Susan Garvey is a recent hire. She's the first ever director of development that the league has had at the state level. And she is really all about trying to float all boats. So not just doing development work for us at the state level, but also figuring out, you know, ways that we can partner with, you know, banks, other corporations, and spread the wealth around to local leagues that, you know, have those bank branches of those banks and other organizations in their area. So Susan has really been a terrific add, and is, you know, trying to hit the ground running and trying to keep up with everything that's going on. So that's really it. That's the end of my slide presentation. I'm sorry if I talk too long, but I'm happy to answer questions or have a discussion, whatever you guys want to do.
Unmute me. I was supposed to indicate earlier that we are hoping that if you have a question, you will use your raise hand electronic button, which is down there in reactions. So if you click on reactions down at the bottom of your screen, you'll see one of the things you can do is raise your hand. And it's a heck of a lot easier to deal with questions if people do it electronically rather than. So does anybody have any questions? Anybody has a question to start us off? Are we going to be a really quiet group? That is so unlike us.
Well, Diane had put something in the chat, and she said, I filled out multiple forms to report. This is on the data collection. Thank you so much. But only got one email back acknowledging one of my forms. I hope that's a glitch and all submissions actually get to you. So thank you for telling me that, Diana. I will just check with Bryn as to whether or not you're supposed to get an acknowledgement email every time. So I will take that back and then get back to you. But so thank you for letting me know.
On the subject of data collection, I have to say that we're going to have a little survey at the end of this meeting. When you, I'll tell you now and remind you later. And what you have, when you click on leave, stay there because the survey pops up and then you can complete the leaving departure. But I hope we've been pretty good. Kathy, do you think we've been pretty good at sending in the surveys?
I think so, and I think the Racial Justice Committee, the Judy Brooks series, has been doing a really good job on that too. And they're the ones that are doing as many, half of our programs at this point. I was wondering, Susan Lowry, did we do one for the candidate forum, for the sheriff candidate forum? I don't know. I didn't do it.
It was a live forum, so we didn't have a Zoom
Yeah,
questionnaire.
but we know we
more-
could have made you could have estimated some numbers. I mean, you can do it without doing a lot of form.
We have a number of new people on steering committee, so we probably need to have a little sort of reminder training of using the surveys and what to do if it's a live event, because this is the first time we've really had a live event.
For some time.
Yeah,
Well,
thank you.
I think we could still do it, and maybe Susan, if you want some help, or you and me and Bonnie can get together and do it.
Thank you.
Thank you. Barbara Pearson, question? Barbara, you need to unmute?
Yes, I need to unmute and I need to appear.
Oh, that would be nice.
So I just finished folding all our clothes so I can do it. So I'm really thrilled to meet Pattye. I've been corresponding with her about, I actually have two issues where I hadn't really realized that the state was such a resource for us. So one of them, but I'm sort of stalled on both of them. So I kind of need, and one of the things that I've stalled upon is that I really haven't dealt with it with my local league very much, but I just thought I would mention them both. And if anybody would, including Pattye, had ideas for me to go forward with it. So one of them is the Poor People's Campaign. So we've been talking about DEI, and I just volunteered, and it turns out that the Massachusetts Poor People's Campaign chapter, or whatever they are, is just now getting organized. They did it around the June march to Washington, and then since then, and they've been organizing events, and they're working on voter registration, and I've been to Springfield so many times since I joined them, because there's always something in Springfield that they're doing with voting. And I keep thinking I'm going to do, in fact, this Saturday, I'll probably do something on healthcare. Yay. At one of the events of the people that we've met through them. But I have put the Social Justice Committee in contact with them, but also I need to start putting us together to see how we can really help them. And also, Pattye, did they ever get back to you with the MOU? I think not. Every time I ask them.
Yeah, no, they did not. I mean, I think, Barbara, I think I shared, did I send you sort of like a template one?
Yes, no, you sent it and they were
Yeah.
thrilled to get it, but they
Okay.
needed to put in what you had said they needed to put in their stuff. Anyway,
Yeah,
you and I
Yeah.
will talk about that, but meanwhile, I wanted to bring it to, since we have so many of our people now, if anybody is interested in making more contact with the Poor People's Campaign, I think I'm a good liaison for that right now. The other thing that I should let somebody else talk, but I'll tell you what the other thing I want to talk about is if we wanted to form a statewide healthcare committee,
Mhm.
whether you have any statewide committees. So
I'm sure there, so what I would want to do is, we obviously have a healthcare specialist, a legislative action, legislative specialist. So I think getting in touch with her is probably the best bet, because she would know what exists statewide, and if it's something you can plug into, or you know what I mean, just so that we're not like reinventing the wheel. Am I understanding what you're asking?
Yeah, well, I know Janice from a long
Okay.
time. Okay. But we actually started making more communication when we had this big thing about having the concurrence at the national convention. And
Oh, yeah.
we made a lot more, but we need to sort of capitalize on that. And
Okay.
Janice, as you know, is up in years,
Yeah, okay.
and she's also been ill. Anyway, let Bonnie or somebody else, but I want to just leave those two things. Go ahead.
Yeah, well, let's talk more about that, because let's figure out a way to, sort of see what we can do to take some next steps on that. On the
Anyway,
healthcare.
thank you so much for
Yeah.
coming to talk
Oh,
to us.
absolutely. My pleasure.
Barbara, before you disappear, how about you talk to steering committee about coming and talking to us about Poor People's Campaign, and also maybe write something for the the e-bulletin and send it to Jessica.
Yes. Wouldn't that be a good idea? Okay.
Yes, yes. Okay.
It's not that I've
Thanks.
never done it. I have done it. I can make myself do it. Okay.
Yes, you can. Bonnie?
I just wanted to underscore too, the Poor People's Campaign. I mean, that's a perfect example of, sort of an authentic, trying to build an authentic, intentional partnership with an organization that is focused on a diverse set of people. So I just want to say, I think that's great.
Well, a diverse set of people who want people to vote.
Exactly,
And
that's
who
what I
want to
mean.
get healthcare, and who want to
Yeah, it's
get
like
incarceration, and all of our issues they want to deal
Yes.
with too.
Yes,
Yes.
because diversity includes, socioeconomic status. I mean, it's not just race and ethnicity. It's all different kinds of things, and so that's a great example of
Young.
one piece of diversity. Yeah.
They're young. I got a
Yeah,
lot of
they're
young
young.
people there.
Right, right. It is a young people's movement. Yep.
Bonnie?
Hi, it's nice to see you, Pattye, and thanks for coming.
Sure.
I just
Hi,
wanted
Bonnie.
to follow up a little bit about the sheriff's forum that we did, which we were happy to do in conjunction with the Northampton Area League. And so it was definitely a combined effort. And as such, I have to say, my impression was they were going to file the report on how many people participated.
Mm-hmm.
Would you rather both leagues file a report?
No, I think, in fact, what we prefer is that when it's a co-sponsored thing with two leagues, one league files, and then there's this place in the form where you can say where other, if other leagues were involved. So it's better to have one form with both leagues in there.
Okay, well, we'll just have to double check with the folks in Northampton League and make sure that something got filed.
Okay, that's great. Thank you so much.
And the other thing I just wanted to mention was that we did look very closely at the ACLU Massachusetts Know Your Sheriff's material that they had printed out, and we did make copies to distribute at the actual forum.
Great.
And so that was very useful. They had approached us about jointly sponsoring a program on the sheriff candidates. But we suggested that we wanted to do it as the league event, follow all the league protocols. And so we declined the ACLU being involved. And it just seemed to go really smoothly working with Northampton.
Great. That's great. Yeah, one of the things we did, the Essex County, the way that, and the way you did it is totally fine. But the way Essex County did it was we kind of did a twofer. So we had the ACLU and their folks who are excellent did the educational piece, so that on one evening, and then the following week, the leagues took the lead in doing the candidate forum. So it was kind of like a education with ACLU folks doing that, and that. So it worked great. It was really good.
Thanks, Bonnie. Adrian, you had your hand up earlier. Do you have question you'd like to ask?
It wasn't a question. Actually, Bonnie covered a lot of what I was going to ask. And thank you, Patty, for your response. That was a terrific forum, and certainly by numbers, I think, with the importance of data collection. But so I will go back on mute because thanks, Bonnie. You covered my questions.
Thanks, Adrian. Anybody else have a question? Darcy.
Hi, I want to thank you for coming, and I have really appreciated the leadership that the Statewide League has put into rules reform in the House.
Mhm.
And I'm wondering if there's any future plans for more action on that, because there's more to do, obviously.
Yeah, Darcy, the answer is I don't know. You know, the Legislative Action Committee is kind of, they'll be working on, you know, what bills and what stuff they're going to be dealing with when the next session starts. So I guess I'm just going to punt that down the road. You know, I think they're over the next couple of months before January, they'll be getting organized, and I just don't know at this point what the plan is around that. But I can, you know, I certainly, I see Jen Muroff, who's now the Legislative Action Chair, all the time because I'm on Zoom with her like 9 times a day. So I can certainly try to find out what the plan is, but I don't know off the top of my head.
Okay, thank you.
Sure.
Thanks, Darcy. Anybody else? Question? Comment? No? You've given us so much information, Patty. It's a little hard to absorb it.
As someone said earlier, there's a lot going on.
Yes, there is. Diana, you have a question, and you are muted, but yeah, I'm sure you know that.
Yeah, yeah, it's more a statement. Thank you very much for this. There are 3 of us on this event tonight from the Brookline League, and what I've really picked up is the importance of collaboration, not only amongst different leagues, but with other organizations. And that's, and I'm sure that probably my fellow board members are thinking this too, as we're going through this event tonight. So I'm hoping that we can explore with some of you more how this all works. And because I think that in general, there are an awful lot of organizations around that operate in silos. And what I'm picking up from you is which I believe in anyway, is the value of collaboration. And just to understand how that works when the league makes a decision to work because of our own structure, makes a decision to work with another organization. So I'm sure we'll be following up with all of you on this. So thank you very much.
Yeah, absolutely.
Patty, do you have any, words of wisdom or experience in terms of collaboration? Because I think we've seen some challenges sometimes to working with a different organization that has different rules.
Yeah, it's a great point. I guess what I would say is, and this, and this does come up. I guess what I would say is that, not literally, but where there's a will, there's a way, right? So I think the important thing to, when we, and Celia Blue from Maywalk talks about this all the time, an authentic partnership is one in which all of the people that are at the table, all of their perspectives need to be heard, right? So I think what happens, what tends to happen is, because the league is 102 years old, and because it does have a lot of rules, sometimes people get bogged down in, well, that's the way we've always done it, or that's the league way, or that's, that kind of thing. And I think there's a way to, sort of work with other organizations so that you're getting, you're actually really getting the input from other organizations, and it isn't just the league, the league's way or the highway kind of thing. So I think people just have to be open to, you know, making sure that everyone, all the voices are heard, and try to think outside the box. You know, if at first it looks like, oh, well, we can't do it that way, just keep talking about it and see, you know, see what you come up with. Because I think, especially like in candidate forums, you know, I'll just give you a quick example. A couple of times with Mass Women of Color Coalition, we've done like a co-moderated model where there's someone from the league and there's someone from Maywalk who are co-moderating the forum. And I think people initially might have thought, oh, that's not going to work, or but it worked great. And I think that it's important to have, you know, somebody from the other organization visible and present and involved and sort of leading the event, along with the league person, which is, you know, the league, the tried and true organization, and then Mass Women of Color Coalition, you know, they've only been around since 2015. So I just think that you have to keep an open mind, and just remember that there's probably a way through it.
I don't want to take too much time if other people are asking questions, but I'm just curious, because the point that you made about people that are in the league that are sort of embedded in the way things have always been done, and a
Yeah.
lot of it is just the league doing it. How, all of you who are on this tonight, how have you influenced others to expand the umbrella for incorporating other groups legitimately in kinds of events that you put on and to be true equals? I think that's maybe a challenge for our league right now.
Yeah, and I don't think you're alone. I think it's a challenge for a lot of leagues, honestly. And it's just, I think it's just a matter of, well, anyways, I'll let someone else talk.
Curious to see what Marcy would say, because Marcy is with Racial Justice Committee, which is of the Amherst League. It's the group that most reaches out to and collaborates with other groups.
Sure. Hi, everybody. So first of all, could you just repeat the specific question? Because I have general things I'd like to say, but I want to be sure I'm addressing your specific
I want to be
question.
sure that I'm not taking too much time in your meeting, because we're from a different group. But it's generally what I've really picked up tonight and truly appreciate is the collaboration of some of the leagues with other organizations and being able to legitimize that within the league structure. Because when there are a lot of old timers, and I'm not being critical, it's just fact. You know, a lot of people who for decades have been involved doing it the league way, and as Pattye says, there are many, many rules.
Right.
How do you convince people that it makes, I think it makes total sense to be collaborating with other groups. I think we can be a lot more effective around issues that we do have positions on at the state level. So I'm just curious how you work on convincing some of the people who are more used to sort of the quote old way of doing things, the validity of this approach.
Well, Susan, it's funny that you asked me to respond because I don't know that we've done such a good job of that. But I'll just tell you a little thing that we're working on right now, because in some ways the Racial Justice Committee of the Amherst League is somewhat separate from some of the old timers in you know, in those kind of marks. You know, there's some overlap, but we're in the process of trying different ways to develop a network of different racial justice groups working on issues in Amherst. And we've had a couple of different starts, and now we've pulled back and we're like working on a third sort of effort or third start. And what we learned after interviewing 15, 16 people from the network who were not league, you know, some were league members, but they weren't identified as being part of the league, was that in the second iteration, we created an advisory group because we didn't want to take full leadership. We wanted it to be more spread out amongst the different groups and their individuals who were working on racial justice issues. And after these interviews very recently, we learned that they wanted us to take leadership. So for us in this situation, you know, our concern was the perception being that the Amherst League and most leagues are predominantly white. Why would we be managing a network? Why would we be in charge of a network regarding racial justice issues? And we specifically for our advisory group chose young people and, you know, mostly people of color. But so there was the league reputation and our integrity and all of that. And also we were offering to do it. We had, you know, we had the time to do it. So they wanted, you know, they came around to say that. So in the network, in terms of all the league rules and stuff, what we're basically trying to make sure of is the nonpartisanship. And that if people are part of our network who are campaigning for offices or you know, or in some way part of a PAC or something that puts them in an area, a zone that would be dangerous for the league, you know, we are very vigilant about that. But otherwise, we're doing a little bit what Pattye was saying about, you know, not doing it the old way, doing it a different way. And as far as how to then bring some of the old timers in, I think it's about modeling and just letting people know this is happening. It's going well. It's kind of cool. You know, join us. But you know, for instance, we have this monthly program that is called the Judy Brooks Conversation Series. And frankly, many league members do not come. We don't get a great turnout from league members. We get a pretty good turnout from community members, Amherst members. But we're not getting the kind of support that in the old days, the way the league that I understood, the way it worked was, if there was a program and you were active in your league, you showed up, whether or not you were sort of interested or not, especially, you know, leadership team. But we're not finding that so much you know, in regards to our programs. So we haven't found the answer to your question specifically, but it's a work in progress. And I think you just kind of go ahead with the new thing and hope that some of the old timers are interested and come along. And if they're not, they continue to gravitate to what they are interested in. And, you know, it all kind of works out. That's how I'd answer your question.
Thank you very much. I hope I didn't take too much time from your program.
No, from my point of view, I think it's a really good question. And I think that it's good for our Amherst League folks to hear how things are going in that regard, as well as, you know, everybody else. So thanks.
Thanks, Marcia. I know I put you on the spot there, and I really appreciate that you took the time to respond.
Sure. No problem, Susan. I'm there for you.
Thanks. So I think
I'm
sorry, Pattye.
I was going to say one thing. I mean, the only thing that to me that is, you know, sort of non-negotiable, as Marcia was just saying, is the nonpartisan piece, right? So, but so far, I mean, the organizations that we're involved in, everybody gets that. I mean, that's not, you know, everyone understands, and all the rest of the organizations, including the Mass Women of Color Coalition, is also nonpartisan. So, and they might be able to do something on their own that potentially, you know, the league wouldn't do. Like they do conversations with candidates, you know, that aren't forums. Now we wouldn't be able to be involved in that, but to me, like, that's the bright line, and everything else is pretty much, you know, you can kind of figure out a way to make it happen. So I just wanted to say that.
Thanks, Pattye. I think we have time for one more question. I think that's going to be Barbara, who is muted again.
Thank you. Actually, Diana, where are you from? I couldn't hear it.
Fine. right
Brookline?
outside of Brookline.
Yeah, Brookline. Okay, thank
Eastern
you.
Mass.
Yes, of course.
Far away.
So I had a question for Pattye, and talking about the rules and stuff. I didn't really understand very much about the way the league worked, except for through this national network that I'm involved in for healthcare. And
Mhm.
one of the big things is not being able as local leagues and local league members to lobby our federal officials.
Yeah,
And, you know, we had sort of thought, oh, well, if the league's position in impact on issues is consistent with what we're talking about, then there's not a problem. We don't have to clear it. But we know now that's not the case. But I'm wondering, as the state league, does the state league have some kind of permanent relationship or liaison to our senators and our reps?
not really.
No.
I mean,
No.
we're, you know, and again, I'm not the expert on this, but we're, you know, the state league is under the same kind of constrictions as local leagues are with regard to federal legislation. I mean, we, you know, that's sort of the purview of national, and we don't get involved unless, you know, we're, you know, quote unquote allowed. So my understanding is that the state league is under the same kind of, restrictions as local leagues. I mean, we just had, so they're doing, one of the things that national is involved in now is they're doing a letter writing campaign from state leagues about the ERA. So LWVMA just wrote a letter to Markey and Senator Warren about the resolution, this joint Senate resolution about the ERA to remove the time restrictions. So when they ask, you know, when they
have an action alert.
when they haven't, so we do that, but we don't have, like, our legislative folks, they don't have relationships with, I mean, I think people do, like, I just know off the top of my head, like, Sharon Roberts is on the call. The Newton League, I think, does like regular like coffees with their Congress people and stuff. So I think that happens. But like, our legislative specialists don't really have relationships with our congressional delegation. Their relationships are really,
Well, they're on the state. They're looking at the
reps,
state
yeah.
laws that are bills that
Yeah.
are going through.
Yeah, they have relations with the state senators and the state reps, but not really the Congress level.
Well, I sort of say that, and Jim McGovern is, I mean, we have Jim McGovern in this area. He's at everything.
Yeah. And I think a lot of local leagues do have, I should say that I think local leagues do those coffees, like elected official coffees and things like that.
But it's rare for, I mean, I don't think we've had anything with Warren or Markey, have we?
I don't think so. We ought to talk about that.
You guys, yeah.
We could have something regional, maybe.
Yeah, that would be interesting.
Yeah.
So anyway, so no, on the lobbying, nationals kind of got the lock on that. And I know, and there's a lot of disgruntlement about that. I know that.
Yeah.
They're pretty reasonable, we're finding.
Okay, good. That's good.
They'll talk.
Yeah. So thank you. Are there any other questions? We're sort of, Susan. Sue.
I have heard through the grapevine that the state league has not succeeded in getting candidate forums in some of the state offices that are on the November ballot. And I'm curious as to what your thoughts are about that. And also, how can we get good information out to people about where people stand on different issues? There's a lot of important offices on the line.
Yeah. I mean, it's really, we're dealing with that right now. So, you know, the league at the state level and the Mass Women of Color Coalition and a number of other organizations, all representing various different communities. We've been trying to plan for governor, AG, and secretary of state. So we're basically getting the stiff arm really from almost all the candidates. And we just this past Tuesday talked about what can, we're trying to think of an alternative program or maybe some kind of a communications piece or press piece about the fact that this is bad. This is bad for democracy, right? So it's a political strategy, obviously, on their part. They don't want, they don't want to participate because they don't want to make a misstep or whatever the strategy is, but it's not good for the voters. So we're trying to figure out, we are hoping to have some kind of an alternative program, since we're not going to be able to do a forum for any of those races. I mean, we kind of said, forget it on the Secretary of State. We knew Galvin wouldn't agree to do anything. He wouldn't get on the same page as Rayla Campbell. We just knew that. So we didn't vigorously follow up, but we really have been trying to follow up with the governor candidates and the attorney general candidates. And we even had a media partner. NECN is willing to be our media partner. So it's just, it's really, really frustrating. People are really, really annoyed.
Well, thank you for your efforts.
Well, you're welcome. They haven't come to much. So like I said, we're trying to figure out an alternative program. So stay tuned. We're going to talk about that next week, to what can we do instead of, kind of a thing.
Thank you, Pattye. I believe it is just about time for us to wrap up. And I want to thank Pattye, I think, for all of us, for taking time this really busy season to come and talk with us.
Thank you so much. It was great to be here.
And I want to thank you all for coming, those of you who are from Amherst and those of you who aren't. And I want to remind you that this program is recorded and it will be on the website, and you will be able to view it there or tell other people where to find it. I want to encourage everybody to think about what they can do to make this a well-informed electorate who turn out and vote. That's really number one for us. And I want to remind you that we're collecting data. So when you push the leave, click on the leave, be sure to stay on for a few seconds and fill out this really simple survey for us.